So another sort of how-to video, I guess, but it's just going to be a bit of tips and tricks for if you want to rewire your car using an aftermarket wiring harness. So we've got Rory here from RS Installations, who does generally most of our wiring. So let's go out the back. I'll ask him a bunch of questions and he'll give us some tips and tricks and maybe some insights into what you want to do if you want to rewire your car yourself.
Okay, action.
Action.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so this is Rory from RS Installations. He does, as I said, most of our wiring. We can do it ourselves, we're pretty lazy. Rory's better at it. So, most guys will tend to buy a generic wiring harness like we've got here. There's a few different brands. We generally stick to the EZ wiring or the ARC ones, or the American Auto Wire, another one that are pretty good. It's a bit more of a jump in price, but you get what you pay for, and especially if you want to put your fuse box in the trunk or under the seat, the American Auto Wire are a better setup for that, aren't they?
Yeah. Quick Wire do one, which has got a rear mount harness. Rebel Wiring do one, which has got a rear mount harness as well, which is a bit of a problem solver in a small car.
Yeah. So, as a guide, like most of these wiring harnesses you can see here, they all generally come pre-wired. The fuse box is all done, most of the harness is all redone, is that correct? Most of them are like that?
Yeah, most of them come pre-assembled like that. You just need to stop and have a think of how many circuits you're going to work with. They come in 8, 12, 16, 21s, which are pretty good. And sometimes you might need to go through it before you put it in to make sure the wire comes out on the harness that you want it to come out on. These are generally configured, so you have a harness that goes to the front of the car, harness that goes to the rear of the car. That one there. You'll have a harness which goes to the steering column, ignition, and all your switches. That one there. And then there's one there which runs all your gauges. So sometimes you might have a wire which ends up in this harness, which you want in this one. And it's a lot easier to change all that stuff before you actually install the harness in your car.
Cool. All right. Well, so that's, and as Rory said, we stick to just carrying the 12 and 22. The 12 circuit harness has your basic stuff. So it's going to do gauges, ignition system and engine starting system, all that sort of stuff. Headlights, tail lights, indicators, and then usually has an allowance for maybe a radio or a thermo fan, but that's about it. So you're like a Roadster, a really basic early Holden, early muscle car, Mustang, where you're not running too many accessories, but if you're sort of going, well, I want to run air conditioning and I might have power windows, I might want a stereo and a fuel pump and a fan, then you may want to look at the 22 circuit. Even if you don't use the circuits, it doesn't hurt to just have them there.
You know, you can always upgrade on a later date down the track if you decide you want to add something. Don't necessarily assume as well that all the wiring is in the harness for what you need. Sometimes, like Alan said, if you're fitting aftermarket air conditioning, all it will have in the harness is a wire to turn the air conditioning on. None of your other wires will come with the kit. And most of these come with a ground wiring kit as well. So you'll need to install grounds to everything.
Yeah, okay, that's handy. That's sort of what we want to run through. The other thing that we've touched upon before, a lot of these harnesses are generally aimed at the American market. So if you're in Australia, for example, and you've got to have the amber indicators, you've got to watch some of the kits, you have to run separate wire, not all.
No, you can just swap the wiring around inside the wiring harness where it connects to the brake light switch, which is in this harness there. Otherwise you'll find you'll have problems getting indicators. They don't usually run a brake light wire. They usually run a wire to a high level brake light, which you can use for a brake light wire.
Okay, so swap out and use your high level brake light wire and then use the indicators. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly it. And do all that on the bench when it's easy to get to. Otherwise I spent too many hours lying on my back underneath the car, so if you can do it easy, do it easy.
Yeah, and that's the other thing as well is work out where you're going to run your fuse box, mount that nice and securely. Sometimes you might want to have it so it's on a little drop-down panel, so you can sort of put it out of the way.
Yeah, access is an important thing further down the track. Don't put your fuse box in and then cover it up with an air conditioning unit, because you're never going to get in there to replace a blown fuse at any stage.
Yeah, and we've done it as well, where we've mounted it and then run the harnesses out, so we'll maybe save you a little bit of time, but also it's good to sort of talk to, if you're not going to do it yourself, and do like what we sometimes do is we mount the fuse box, then we run the harness, then ring Rory and go, look, just come and terminate it and that sort of thing. You do just need to think about where you run your harness, Obviously you don't want to have it where, you know, it's going to chafe or anything, or it's going to get stood on, or and that sort of thing. And then with a hot rod, you got to think about also maybe when you wire it, you don't want to, with a normal car where you're not pulling the body off and that sort of thing, it's probably fine to wire it. But if you're going to pull your body off, you want to
put plugs on it so you can disconnect all things. I normally do all my dashes on plugs, so if you ever need to do any maintenance behind the dash, you can just undo a few screws and unplug the dash, put it out of harm's way so it doesn't get damaged.
Yeah, and even things like with the thermo fans, because they use a bit more power, is it work to normally the relays separate?
No, all you'll find on here is a trigger wire, which I think is probably in this one, which will turn on the relays. You need to add all your relays and heavy duty wiring as an extra on top of your harness.
Yeah, so they're a little more generic, but it's not hard, and especially thermo fans, because what do you normally run for thermo fan relay wise? 40 or 50 amp?
50 amp. Yeah. And if it's 2 fans, I'll always run 2 completely separate circuits to each fan. If you have a fan go bad one day, you'll at least have 1 fan to get you home.
What about headlights, relays for headlights?
Yeah, it's easy to relay these. You just put a high and low relay on the harness and have it triggered from your headlight switch or your column switch on the steering column.
Okay, cool. So I don't know if there's anything else. If you've got questions for us, put it in the comments. I can get hold of Rory pretty quick. We can answer any questions and that sort of thing. And like I say, we normally
address them to Dr. Rory.
Dr. Rory. But yeah, and then what I'll do is we'll duck underneath, because we've been wiring, well, Rory's been wiring the 55, so I'll just show you some of the stuff he's done and just some of the, because we're sort of trying to hide the wiring a little bit in that car. You can have a look. Questions in the comments. Hopefully that helps someone out.
Use labels. I use labels on everything. Makes life a lot easier. If you start a job today and come back to it next week, if you've got labels on things, it makes it a lot easier to carry on from where you left off last time.
Yeah, you'll notice that when Alan films under the dash of the 55 there, everything's labelled, which is always good when you hand the car over to a customer. You might know where you put everything, but a customer might not know. So at least if everything's labelled, everybody knows. So
yeah, cool. Easy. Thank you, sir.
Anytime.
There you can see, we're looking to the glove box of the 55. So we've got the, you can see the fuse box. You can see Rory marked everything just so we know. And what's going to happen is the glove box in the 55 is actually not going to be a glove box. We're going to have a panel, and the switches for the air conditioning and that sort of thing will be there. But you can see everything's pre-laid out. You can see the switches and everything like that. There's all the dash wiring ready to connect up to the dash when we get to that. That harness there, Craig is going to run that through to the front, so it'll be hidden, so you won't actually see any of that stuff in the engine bay. Let's just go in the engine bay and maybe the boot and show you. You can see the harness coming out, so you'll have the booster master cylinder there and the steering column in the bottom hole. So this is all the engine, so that's going to go across here and then come down like where the engine will obviously be. So basically there'll only be 1 wire across there. The headlights and everything like that will come out of the firewall there, just come across to here, and then we'll run them all behind, so that what will happen is these side inner fender skirts, there really won't be anything in there. You won't see them at all. It'll be nice and clean and smooth. You can see I've obviously started sanding them back. They were covered in enamel, so we'll get that sorted. Boot here quickly. So this is we're going to put the battery in the boot here. You can just see some of the wires laid out. So we've obviously got tail lights, indicators, fuel pump, fuel level sender, and then there's the wiring for the hidden filler, because that obviously comes out. You can go back and check a previous video where that opens up. In fact, I might even just add that to this one. But hopefully that helps people out and gives them some ideas for running their own wiring huts. Light goes out, light goes in. All right, hopefully that video was of some use to people. One thing I did forget to mention is with nearly all of these wiring harnesses is each piece of cable or piece of wire is marked every 6 inches. So you pull your harness through to the front, like let's say you're looking at your headlight or your front of car harness. So there'll be a wire that'll say every 6 inches. One will say, right hand front headlight, left hand front indicator, that sort of thing. And then you go to the engine one, and one will say, temperature sensor, that sort of thing. So every 6 inches they are marked. It's pretty small, so you have to put your glasses on if you're old and blind like we are. But hopefully that was of some use. If you like what we're doing and you want to see some more tech stuff, like, subscribe, hit notifications, all that stuff. One day I'll work out how to put those links onto the video. For now, thanks for joining us.